Hi, John Velie, immigration attorney and CEO of OnlineVisas. Checking in with you today. Here we are in another immigration solutions during the coronavirus. We try to do this every day. We're into our, third week now. Hope you're doing all right, sheltering in place. We had a wonderful sunny weekend over Easter weekend here in Oklahoma. Kind of surreal though, right? Hope yours was good. We took a plate of ham and béarnaise sauce and some of my wife's great kind of vegetable hash she makes over to my parents and gave it to them. And then my kids, touched hands with my mom and dad's hands through glass, right? It was pretty weird. Took a picture of it. Pretty surreal moment that captures where we are today. Sunny spring day, grandparents and grandchildren not being able to hug each other on a big holiday. So that's pretty surreal. Other surreal parts that we don't think about, we were driving back home and it got really rainy and cold here last night, dropped about 20-30 degrees, and saw a guy. You could see that he was kind of packing up his little world, homeless guy inside of a church. There's a church kind of down the street from where we're at, Episcopal church, that has a couple nooks and crannies in it. And so got there, jumped out of the car to see how he was doing, and he was covered up under a blanket, and he had about a 12-pack of finished beers next to him, and he's screaming and laughing to somebody under his sleeping bag, kind of sitting up, has it over his head, right? I'm like, well, that's weird. And I go home and I'm like, well, look, it doesn't matter. I mean, if he's drunk, he wants to fight me, whatever. I'm gonna give him some food. So I loaded up a plate of ham, and we had these old donuts, or not old donuts. We had donuts that morning, and there were some leftover donuts. Got him some donuts, and I went back to him, and I was like, sir, excuse me, are you there? And he takes down the sleeping bag he has over his head. And I got to remember, it's really cold last night, right? It was probably in the 40s and wet and windy. And he goes there, and I said, look, I brought you some food. I got you some ham and some greens. And he's like, greens. He got all excited about the greens and handed it to him. And, I don't know. He was really happy, but I felt like I didn't do enough. I don't know about that stuff. Whenever you look into the real, existence of where people are right now, and they're in a really bad spot, can you ever do enough? So it was good to give them a plate of food, but I just wouldn't want to be homeless right now. That's for sure. I mean, do you ever? But on a cold, windy, gray night with everybody else packed up and hardly anybody else on the street, it seemed incredibly lonely. Just thinking about that guy today, and I'm going to try to wander over there a few more times and give him a few meals whenever we can. So, look, I'm John Velie, CEO of OnlineVisas, talking about immigration during the coronavirus. We're actually talking about everything else. See a couple of good friends out there, Jakes Vandermeer, Kathy Elbtom, my buddy Greg Goodman, Mohan Magamari is in there. Good to see you guys. Thanks for showing up. Well, we've hit some milestones. We are now over 524,000 cases, over 500,000 cases in the United States, with 20,000 deaths. So that's been happening. Hi, JT Thatcher. Good to see you. And on the world stage, we're at 1.7 million and 111,000 deaths. So we keep climbing. It's weird. We're in a Groundhog Day over and over again, aren't we? That's why I come on here. I mean, this is probably more for me being able to talk than for any of you guys that tune in. But I really appreciate seeing you. It's a way to reach out, and just seeing that you're watching makes me happy, and connecting with you guys on a little level. I'm here in my office, but I'm the only one here. I come in every day. There's hardly anybody in this building, but just makes me more, I get more done. Right. So that's what it is. But there are a couple things on immigration we can talk about. They're doing some of the things that make sense. if you're applying for an extension, if you're running out of status, you can file an extension, an I-539 for a visitor's visa, things like that, and that makes sense. But they also said if you file it in a timely manner, that's a good thing. But they've noticed that they have a special situations page for immigration, and on the special situations page, you're going to take things into consideration under the coronavirus. So if you don't file it in time and you get an extension in 30 days late, that's what they say, 30 days, and you show that it's connected to COVID-19, they'll take it into consideration. Also, if you're on a visa waiver. Now, the visa waivers, if you don't know, I know a lot of people that tune into this are not immigration specific folks, but a visa waiver is when people come over here and they have 90 days and they can't extend it and they got to go home. But unfortunately, a lot of people can't go home right now, so they're going to have some flexibility on that, and they'll give them a grant a period of satisfactory departure for up to 30 days. So those folks will be able to do that. So that came out on immigration today. That's a good thing. But I wanted to talk about happier things, right? See Michael Radzicki, Buzzy's boys out there. Kurt Hill, the great musician, and of course one of my favorite professors, one of the smartest people you'll meet, Rick Tepker, is out there, and love seeing all you guys are there. Brian Shade, hello, how you doing? Oops. Oh, we had suicide, phone suicide. That's a horrible thing. Well, I'm back. We lived through that fall. So I was thinking the other day, and I posted this, so if you saw it, I just want to go into it a little bit more. Have you seen those posts, here's 10 things that I don't like that everybody else likes? I thought about that. I'm like, look, we need to be more positive. What are things that you like that other people don't like? Right? So I started thinking about that list, and I got to 10. I'm like, well, that's not enough. And I just kept coming. So I came up with 100 things that I like that not that many other people like. Well, that some other people don't like. And I'm staying away from politics for the most part. So 100 things. First one, the band Devo. I saw those guys for the first time on Saturday Night Live in the 70s, and I thought they were part of the show, and I discovered they weren't. And what that first album, Are We Not Men, We Are Devo. Devo stands for de-evolution, and it was the first classic nerd rock. And if you ever listen to Devo, go back and listen to an album. They were amazing guitar players. Those guys could wail, and it was guitar with keyboards, but before keyboards kind of took over with the whole new wave thing. So it was harder than that. Really great music. Just check it out if you haven't in a long time. Number 2 on my list, Kraft macaroni and cheese in a box. I can't get enough of that stuff. I've always loved it. I like to spice it up with a little Tony Chachere Cajun seasoning, maybe some chunks of ham, but I can just eat it. I can just eat it at any time. And I've eaten it, just like sometimes you didn't have any milk, so you had to put water in there. Sometimes you didn't have any butter, so you just did it with the sauce. I don't care. I can eat that stuff. I don't know why it is, but I love it. Another one's cartoon movies as an adult. Luckily, I have a lot of kids. I have 6 kids, and some of them are adults. But a kid is the greatest thing for an excuse to watch a cartoon movie. Cartoon movies are amazing. Matter of fact, they're some of the best cinema because they get the great what am I calling? I'm losing my words. Great actors to be in these movies, and it's a lot of fun, and I can't see enough cartoon movies. Dive bars, I love a dive bar over almost anything. I can go into a dive bar and not know anybody, strike up a conversation, I don't care where it is, in the mountain towns of Colorado, or on a beach, or wherever, just anywhere a good dive bar is, go there, get a long neck beer, hang out, listen to music. It's fantastic. The Deli is my favorite dive bar. That's in Norman, but there's been some great ones. There was a great one in Westwood, very fancy town where UCLA is, and it was one little sports bar, and I remember going there with the UCLA rugby team, Tommy Smith and those boys. They just had sports memorabilia dangling from fishing wire, like a helmet or a tennis racket. It was the worst decorated thing you'd ever seen, but what a great place. Usually you meet great people, and they're usually run by great people. The Blue Bonnet in Norman is another great dive bar that I love, but they're awesome. What's your favorite dive bar? Throw me out some a little bit. This is supposed to be interactive. Hi, Dave Clancy. I see you there. Anna Klueva, the amazing professor, one of the inventors of social media, and Anna's class has been helping promote my social media, and including some of these videos. They're fantastic. Shout out to Anna and her class at the University of Houston. So number 5, horseback riding. I got to live in the country as a kid. You may not believe it. We had a real Green Acres existence. My dad and mom met at Harvard. They then went to Stanford. That's where I was born. And they're from New York. My dad from Brooklyn, New York, originally, out to the Long Island after that. But when we got to Oklahoma, we lived in Norman where the university is, but we moved out to Little Axe, which is about 30 miles and 100 years from Norman. And it was Green Acres before there was Green Acres. And we had horses, and I love horseback riding. One of the best things, one of the best smells in the world are everything around horses, right? The saddles, the blanket you put on them, the horse themselves. Out of all the animals, the scent of a horse is fantastic, and just great to ride those great beasts. And it's been a long time since I did it. I love longboarding. I started longboarding really just to help me with snowboarding. I was 40 years old when I first snowboarded. It takes 3 days to get up on a snowboard if you've ever tried it. It is vicious. And if you're a kid trying it, like when my son John, we went out, and my friend Jeff LaCrone used to work with me. We went to Aspen, and I'd already been doing it for a couple of years, but we started doing it, and John would just kind of fall down like those little dolls would. If you press the button, they kind of collapse, and they'd pop back up. Jeff, on the other hand, was a 280-pound former football player, rugby player, right? Massive guy. And when he'd fall, it would just be like, timber, and it was this long, crushing blow. And by lunchtime, Jeff is just, pale as you could be, and John was ready to go. But Jeff kept going, learned how to do it. It was awesome. But longboarding, I just did to kind of do between, snowboarding sessions. I only snowboard a couple of times a year, a couple of days here and there. I'm lucky enough to represent some ski resorts, Aspen, Telluride, Winter Park, those sort of great places, Jackson Hole. I've got to represent them and go there and snowboarded, right? But, many months go beyond, between those times. So I started longboarding, and man, it is just really one of the best things you can do. Me and my buddy Kelso and Scotty Casso and Chris Mattingly, we've developed a gang called the Boomtown Sturfers, and we snowboard around town, and we've got our way into the University of Oklahoma's parking garage. Don't tell them. But we go there, and it's sort of like a mini ski resort, in that you cruise down, and then you get back on this glass elevator, and you go back up. It's only 6 stories tall, but you go back up, and then you go down again, and it's a blast. Just a lot of fun. Hey, tweeters out there, Lisa Berry, it's good to see you, and Matta and Brandy Fowler. How y'all doing on a Monday? It's good to see you. We're talking about immigration. We're actually talking about the 100 best things that I like that other people may not. I've only got down to number 6. I like China, right? China has gotten a really bad, China's gotten a really bad reputation because of the virus, right? All sorts of negative things are talking about this virus. Kung flu, the Wuhan virus, the China virus. We've had these disputes with China, but I love China. China is an awesome place. I found China to be some of the friendliest people. And the word for China, Chinese word for America is Pengyo, which also means friend. The Chinese love us. They had a worse genocide at the hands of the Japanese than Jews did at the hands of the Nazis. Just more people died, right? Or there's a lot more of them. But still, it was a horrible thing. America came to save them. And the Chinese and American people have a wonderful relationship. And if you've ever been to China, it's an amazing place, right? And I went for the first time in 2007, and I met a number of Chinese people who had never met another white person, much less an American. And just just being cut off from each other for so long was so wild. But it's an incredible people. They're incredible people. The food is amazing. It's a wondrous and massive place. And I've always found it really great, and I really love Chinese people. So I've been thinking about the Chinese a lot lately, and China is one of those places that I like, and other people don't, I guess. I love really spicy Indian or Thai food. The spicier the better. I've gone to India a few times. I've never gotten to go to Thailand, which would be fantastic. But I always go to the Thai restaurants around here, and there's some great ones. Thai, for example. If you've never been to Thai in Norman, Oklahoma, go in there and see Coy and Clint. Those are great people. Clint's from Norman. He was on vacation and was in Phuket when he met Coy, who was working there at the time. And now Coy and her mama cook up some great food at Thai. It's some of the freshest, best you'll ever meet, or ever have. Try that out. But spicier the better. I always go a 4 or a 5. India has different Indian food in different parts of the country. Telangana is the area in southern India where Hyderabad is, and it is some really, really spicy food. And it's so spicy that other Indians eating Telugu food can't do it. But I loved it, and I always thought I wouldn't be able to. And I think just growing up and eating Mexican food and of course spicy Thai food made it easier for me, and I've always loved that. So Thai food, spicy Thai and Indian food's great. Reggae, I love reggae. That is some of the most pure music there is. Every time they sort of try to change it, it finally gets itself back. I appreciate ska, which is a really fast British version of it with horns, but reggae is very pure. And down my list, I have the blues, and for the same reason. Actually, the strums are the opposite. The blues and the rock and roll have a downward strum, and reggae has an upward strum, and you can kind of hear it once you realize that. But reggae music is very pure and very cool. Good to see Paul Riddle, the GOAT, up there. Good to see you, Mariel Martin. We talked about her monk coming into town, the Dalai Lama's guy. What an amazing man he is, and I really can't wait for him to get here. That'll be a great time. So we talked about Hawaiian shirts. I do a thing on Hawaiian shirts on Friday. I drink a beer, talk to you guys. I'm drinking a Coke today. This session sponsored by Coca-Cola. Not that they gave me any money, but they give me caffeine, and that's enough right now. I'm feeling a little hard to get out of bed this morning for whatever reason. Kind of cold and just yucky. So Coca-Cola is sponsoring me through that. One of my favorite things to do, I don't know about you, one of my favorite things to do is fall asleep under a tree in the afternoon. I don't care if it's in a hammock. I don't care if it's in the grass. You can get, kind of itchy in Oklahoma under a tree, but other places, California, especially under a palm tree. Pam and I took our honeymoon to Costa Rica about a year ago, actually. We finally got around to it, not right after we got married, but we went to Costa Rica, went surfing, and one of the greatest days ever, not just because it was my honeymoon with Pam, but we surfed, and then we just go pass out because it was exhausting. And you do 5 or 6 waves, we go, and there's this great palm tree, and just fall asleep in the shade. I'm someone that kind of likes the shade more than the sun in the summertime. I love to fall asleep under the shade with a nice breeze, and that just sounds good to me right now. I could do that any day. Dirt roads. Something just awesome about a dirt road. Just the dust that picks up after you're just seeing it kind of wander, through that. We used to live on the end of a dirt road when we lived in Little Axe, and I don't know, something about them that are just great. Sleeping with the door or windows open. I don't know about you guys, man. Especially this time of year, the spring air is out there. A little bit of smell of rain in the air is fantastic. Or if you are lucky enough to live by a beach, especially with big pounding waves like California or Costa Rica, or my buddy Randy's place in Jamaica, they live near they have a kind of a lava. I don't know, what do you call it? It's not a beach, and it's just kind of these lava bed, and it creates a barrier, so the waves just smack it, and it's just rhythmic, just crushing sounds. And that with the door open is about the best way to fall asleep. That's the white noise that I love. Bad movies that still make you tear up. My wife laughs at me. My children laughed at me. We'll be watching the worst movie you've ever seen. right? Well, it's like, are we going to turn this off? And then it gets to that culminating part. The music gets you there. They build it up. Next thing you know, I've got a little tear coming down my eye, and I'm trying to wipe it off without anybody looking. And they all know it, so they'll just start looking at me. But I can't help it. I love that. Killer whales. Man, what are some of the greatest animals that there are? They operate in pods. They're incredible killers. Seeing a killer whale take on a seal and toss it around is one of the most, powerful things you'll ever see. But man, what graceful animals. Much prefer a killer whale to a shark. I don't know about you, but that's just me. Silver dollars. I really love silver dollars. Silver dollars are some of the most beautiful things in the world. I actually have a couple right here. This is a silver dollar. This is the Walking Liberty silver dollar. They're beautiful. This is 2020. I got it at the beginning of the year. Boy, I wouldn't have told you this year has turned out to be just ridiculous. But there's a 2020 silver dollar. Historic in its negativity, I believe, but there we got that for perpetuity. The 2020 silver dollar. I like to give my kids silver dollars. Silver dollars aren't just $1 anymore. They cost about $20, but you can get the old ones, the Morgan silver dollars or the Peace silver dollars, and those are pretty cool. Hey, Alan Mooring, good to see you. Eric Weimer and Gwen Witherspoon. Eric, we were talking about you with the truck Angela. We have a next door neighbor that has a truck named Angela. He also has a wife named Angela, because Eric Weimer made a license plate with Angela's picture on it and put it on the front of the truck Angela that Angela doesn't like very much. And it's just a glorious orange old beater of a truck. And Eric is just an incredible sense of humor, and that was pretty good stuff. So we were talking about you and Angela the other day. It's good to see you. We're to mechanical watches. I love mechanical watches. Not wearing one today. Forgot my watch. But, as we've gotten into, Apple Watches and Fitbits and all those sort of things, I think the watch, I love those. In particular, I like Roman numeral watches. Those are really cool. I've been collecting cheap watches. Like I have a Timex that I got for $100, and I'm trying to keep these cheap watches that are pretty fun to have, and minimalist watches are pretty neat. So I like a good mechanical watch. I love convertibles. I haven't driven a convertible day-to-day in a while. I've been driving an SUV, which are pretty awesome in their own right. But I like the SUV, and it's a great, great car. Don't get me wrong. It's they make you feel very safe. I can load up all the kids. I got 3 rows. But a convertible, I've had a number of them in my life. In high school, I had an MG convertible, which is a death trap, right? It's the smallest vehicle. And being 16 years old and not knowing how to drive one of those little guys around was dumb, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, you could really zip. And I keep losing this. I'm sorry about that. We're having a rough time technically with this going down. We got Wassali Serevi on there, though. Wassali, the magician, greatest sevens rugby player of all time. Good to see you watching, Wassali. I was actually wearing a Serevi rugby a Serevi Hawaiian shirt on Friday doing this show, How to Practice Law in a Hawaiian Shirt. I'm not today, so we're much more serious today, but it's good to see you out there. We've been watching a lot of Serevi rugby lately. My 14-year-old son has just started playing rugby, Blake, and we've been watching a lot of sevens rugby because that's what he's playing. And the greatest sevens rugby player the world has ever known is Wassali Serevi. Watching this show just like you, and the highlights of Weiss are spectacular. So if you can YouTube Wassali Serevi highlights, I tell you, you will not be disappointed. It's an amazing thing. But we were talking about my favorite things that other people don't always like, right? And so convertibles. I loved having a convertible. I have one in my garage. I've had it for 20-something years. I haven't driven it in about 6. It's an old Mercedes 650 SL. Remember those from the show Heart to Heart? It kept not running, so I just parked it in the garage, and someday I'll fix it up. But me fixing up a car is laughable. For a number of reasons. I am the least mechanically inclined human being in the world. Now, my next door neighbor, Chris, who has the truck Angela, that guy can fix anything. So maybe Chris and I will team up someday and we'll fix that old convertible, and that'll be a lot of fun. So in any case, that's what we've been talking about. Convertibles are great. I like to drive a convertible with the top down on any day with the sun out. right? I don't care if it's too windy. I don't care if it's too cold. I don't care if it's too hot. There's something about the wind in a convertible blasting the radio that is just different and better than any other way to get from A to B. A motorcycle's scarier, right? I mean, you got to be so much more aware in a motorcycle than in a convertible. So a convertible is great, especially on a good road trip. That's a blast. I really like the big ones. I've never had one, but you know those ones, the big tanks, like an old Cadillac convertible or something, where the back seat is literally just open. That would be fantastic. I'd love those. Slip-on shoes. I love slip-on shoes because I really don't like to wear socks. You know, slipping on a shoe without tying them is, to me, what it's all about. I look at it as a perk because other people have to tie their shoes, but I like a good slip-on. Vans are my favorite, but there's some variations of them that are great. The CVs, right? CVs were some of the most famous shoes there were, and they went out of business because they got merged with Converse, and they were determined to be a monopoly, so they stopped. And Steven Tyler, not Steven Tyler. Steven Tyler's in Aerosmith. I forgot Steven's last name. Anyways, from here, he reinvented the shoe, and they've got a great mid-high kind of looking Vans-looking shoe called the Huntington, named after Huntington Beach, and he's kind of got an appreciation of California. Anyway, the Huntington Midi, a great shoe. Love those. But slip-ons, which we're talking about, smiling eyes. My wife has the best smiling eyes. Whenever she looks at you, it just lights up, and it's unbelievable. You can really tell a lot about a person from their eyes, right? Are their eyes smiling at you, or are they saddened? Are they somewhere else? Anyway, nothing to me makes me happier than to see the smile in someone's eyes, and in particular, my wife's. Surprises. I love surprises. Speaking of my wife, she threw a great 50th birthday party for me a number of years ago. Totally got me by surprise, and it scares you kind of. You get startled a little bit, but I think it's that fear that made me like it. But I love surprises. I don't want to know what my presents are. I don't know about you. I mean, for any of the holidays, I would never want to, or a birthday, check the box and see what it is. Never had an interest in that, because then you would open it and you already know what it is. It's the same about when somebody ruins a movie for you. Like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. Hate when that happens because I love surprises. I want to know what's going to happen in the twist. Underdogs. Gotta love underdogs, right? It's funny. The teams that I root for are pretty much winning teams. Oklahoma University in football, the Oklahoma City Thunder in basketball because we're from here, but the New York Mets are my baseball team, and my God, they're underdogs. And I think that comes from my dad, who grew up in Brooklyn. He was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan before he became a Mets fan, and he just never wanted to root for the Yankees. So that was ingrained in our whole socialism, what do you call that? That part of our DNA, I guess. Part of our upbringing was to hate the Yankees and to love the underdog. So it was always a good friend. Always a fan of underdogs, not just as teams, but people. Love to see people coming out of nowhere to make it. That just makes me happy, and I love to help them if I ever get the opportunity, and I've had a few chances to help underdogs, which leads to my number 24th thing that I love that not everybody does, is causes. I love a good cause. I love when somebody is really fighting for right over the status quo or what is, right? So a good cause gets me going. Surrealism. Surrealism as a form of art, I guess it could be a form of literature, is just surreal, right? Surreal, not real. Those paintings, are fantastic. Salvador Dali was a great surrealistic painter, and it really influenced a lot of the 60s, the rock and roll posters and those sorts of things. Surreal art is really cool. Truth. Big fan of truth. I said I like things that other people don't like. We're in the weirdest world right now where truth is almost, I used to think it just had to be, right? I mean, I thought we were all grew up to tell the truth. And right now, not telling the truth is almost a style, right? A way of communicating is to just not tell the truth, and or to tell variations of the truth as if they are the truth. There's only one truth. I mean, truth is like a number. It's, it's the number 5. It can't be 6. It can't be 4. It's the truth. But, I'm a lawyer, so I know that words are gray, and there might be different variations of analysis, but the truth is the truth, and I love the truth, and I really don't like lying, and it's frustrating when it happens. Witty lyrics. We've been talking about John Prine a lot. He passed on, one of the greatest lyricists, and really because they were witty. I also like authors like Tom Robbins because he's incredibly witty, and that just love that stuff. Black and white photos. Black and white photos have such a drama to them, don't they? They, you take the same photo and put it in black and white and slow it down, and it just grabs you in an artful way, in a dramatic way, right? But black and white photos, I love those. I think they're great as pieces of art. Casablanca as a movie. Casablanca was filmed in one setting. And it's incredible. Humphrey Bogart, it has to be the best movie of all time. Ask anybody that's seen them all, I guess. But, that movie never gets old. Mediterranean food. A lot of times Mediterranean restaurants, right? They're Iranian restaurants. And, I think it's all, marketing. Like you just, no one opens an Iranian restaurant. So a lot of the Mediterranean restaurants are operated by Iranians. And man, there's some great food. I'm gonna butcher this, but the kubita kebab. I don't know if kubita is the way you pronounce it, but it's this long piece of, beef, kind of flattened and probably on a long skewer. And then they put it over a bed of white rice with some saffron rice. It's called Saffron. It was one of those restaurants here that's fantastic. And the Mediterranean food is like the sister of Saffron owns the Greek house, but they're not Greek, they're Iranian, because if you're Iranian, you own a Greek restaurant or you own a Mediterranean restaurant. That's how you deal with that. But, same thing, Laotians own Chinese restaurants. You don't think a lot of Laotian restaurants, but there's an American version of Chinese food anyway that doesn't really exist in China. Not very often, not very many places, maybe some street food version of it, but again, that's just an interesting aside, but I love Mediterranean food, or Iranian food, or I guess it's Mediterranean food, which is Iranian food. I love really good but cheap red wine. I don't know about you guys, but doesn't the guy that just knows everything about the wine that orders for the table kind of frustrate you? I mean, I just remember this one time in Vegas. We were with some friends, and we all go out to eat. And, Panda Express is. Who's that? Panda Express is awesome. Yes, Eric, Panda Express is awesome. I was wondering if it was Laotian. Maybe it is. Oh, Jerry Fagoni's out there, and Walt Lamar, a couple of great dudes right there. We're talking about things that I like that not everybody does, and I was just starting off on really great but cheap red wine. What I was talking about a story in Vegas. A bunch of us got together, and this one guy from LA was talking about the wine and stuff like this, and he just takes over and he orders this wine, and I'm looking at my other couple buddies and like, what's this about? And I guess he's ordering it. It's fine. And then he made us split the damn tab with him. I mean, I hate people like that. But, I've been to France, and I'll come to France later. French know their wine, like the plumbers know the wine, right? They know wine the way we know sports stats, right? Their Monday water cooler discussion, if there were water coolers anymore in our existence, instead of, how did so-and-so play in the NBA or NFL game, we're like bottles of wine. And they love it when it's cheap. So you can go to a French, liquor store or a wine shop and get a great bottle of wine for like $10. And so and those are great. And it's wines, if you don't know, it's pretty difficult, but there's some really great wine stores. And there's one I'd do a shout out to is the Spirit Shop in Norman. And the guys at the Spirit Shop, Matt Sturr and his guys, they are amazing because if you bring up a bottle of wine and they'll say, you don't want that bottle of wine. I know a much cheaper one that's a lot better. And then they'll take you over there and lose money and sell you a cheaper bottle of wine because they're so into the knowledge of it and they're really interactive. And there's too many stores. Do you know that, like, when I go into a store and the people there, whatever their host or the folks working there ask you if you want to be helped. I don't know about you, but I'm like, no thanks, just looking. I hate the interaction with the clerks, and I don't know why. I mean, I just feel like I don't want to be pushed. I don't want to be sold or talked into anything. I want to find whatever I want. I want to kind of get in and get out. I don't like to shop and look around at most places. I like to I have a presupposed idea that I need a pair of Levi's 501 jeans from Dillard's, and I'm going there and I know what size and I'm going to get them, and don't tell me anything. And I don't know. I think that's a guy thing, or at least some guys. Anyway, but the wine stores, I love the interaction with them because you can't tell a bottle of wine from another unless you just really know that stuff. Like, oh, the ones with the ducks are better. The ones with the ducks are better than the ones with the houses. But that's not how it works. I think they should do that, though. Ali Maldonado's on there. Carrie Perry says, try this Mango Mad Dog. Well, that's some good stuff. That's great advice, Carrie. Thank you. I think Mango Mad Dog might be an underrated fine wine. 2020, I guess that we've always been looking forward to Mango or Red Dog 2020, Mad Dog 2020, because it's finally 2020 and it must be ripe now. So moving on, we have gotten past. We're now, I love people that put themselves out there. It's real easy to sit back and just be who you are and watch. But I really appreciate those that get out there and say things, stand for things. The people that act are not just the judgers. I like them a lot. Not everybody does. Muhammad Ali. I think Muhammad Ali is one of the greatest people of all time. Muhammad Ali, I was a kid when he was, boxing a lot in the 70s. I wasn't old enough to remember when he chose not to go to the Vietnam War, but he went to jail. And really, one of the most principled guys in the world, took on, became a black Muslim, obviously changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. And he was such a socially extroverted and open thinker. He really pissed off a lot of people. And but if you look back on him, what a great man. And again, he put himself out there and he never held back from what he felt. And I think he is almost across the board beloved in our country. And I think that's usually what happens, right? Those that are controversial when they're around become the heroes when people look back on them and they're not afraid of him anymore. But Muhammad Ali, a great guy. France, I was going to talk about France. France is, I love France. France got a big negative from us. I guess we had a dispute with France under the days of George W. Bush because they wouldn't support the Iraq War, which people are now saying, well, I didn't support it, I didn't want to support it. They were right. France was right the whole time, but we had such a negativity towards France and America that we changed the name of French fries. You remember that? French fries became freedom fries. Anyway, France is a cool place. If you've never been to France, go to France. France is awesome for a couple reasons. Number one, they make just anything ornate, right? Instead, if we just put a bridge across water, they'll take the bridge and they'll put gold leaves and dragons' heads and lions and fancy things all over. They can't just leave it alone. They got to decorate everything, right? And they do it in the most ornate way possible. They also, as excited as they are about just a simple bridge, they are sort of unexcited people. They're like, they kind of look down on it all, right? So I love the way they just sit outside at a table and drink coffee and smoke cigarettes and talk about, probably things in a fairly negative way. And I find that interesting. I also love how much they love conversations and parks. They really have great parks and they love parks, and their parks are always full of people. And dinner. A dinner in France is about a 3 hour affair. They don't have any, no sports on TV or anything like that. And don't get me wrong, I love sports on TV. I'll watch sports on TV when I'm eating dinner in my house. But I appreciate France for its ability to just have a meal based on a conversation. Or a meal that sort of evokes conversation. And there's course after course. They start with a, kind of a beginning drink. They give you a bottle of wine. They have a dessert drink. In between all that, they have these meals, right? Or these courses that come out that are fantastic. And I don't know enough French to really get by. So when I went, we knew that boeuf was beef and poulet was chicken. So we just let's have the boeuf or let's have the poulet. And it would come out so different from each meal. And one of the great things about them is their ability to make sauce. Right? They just take great ingredients and kind of decorate it just like they do their bridges. And then they put a sauce on it. And sauces are amazing. And once you taste great sauces over and over again, it kind of makes just a regular food so bland. Now, I know I did mention that macaroni and cheese are one of my favorite foods of all time, and they are. But so I'm a complex guy. I can love French cuisine and macaroni and cheese at the same time for various different reasons. All right, so moving on. I love college football over the NFL, and I'll explain it. College football, you don't really know what's going to happen. It's much more easy to have an interception, fumble, guys kind of making mistakes. I don't know what it is. It's the pomp and circumstance. It's the ceremony around it. I mean, college football, pro football didn't make football better. It just didn't. If you ever go to a college football environment and then go to a pro football environment, the difference is a college town sort of wrapped around it. Everything sort of is around it. That's what our world is like in many parts of the South and stuff like that. But also the Big Ten and in the Pac Coast, right? I mean, Oregon and Cal and Stanford and all those are amazing. And so I just think college football is better than the NFL. The NFL did not make it better, even though they're better athletes. But for converse reasons, I love the NBA over college basketball. They are better athletes, but college basketball is boring. Squeaky shoes. The NBA has figured out how to entertain everything that you can do around it. I mean, they have figured out the best way to package sports. My kids love it. My wife loves it. And it's amazing. Chief Kicking Props out there. Good to see you. Nick Blackman, Paul Good, and Charlene O'Connor. Thanks for showing up. I'm John Velie. I'm talking about the 100 things that I like that other people don't. I was just explaining why I like the NBA over college basketball and that I like college football over the NFL. But I'll tell you this, is that college basketball is a dumpster fire right now. I just watched a really great documentary on this guy remember the whole deal that came down where the FBI was going to take down college basketball and it didn't happen? They were going to destroy it and it didn't happen. And what they did is they sent one guy to jail who was kind of a recruiter of kids and who would send them to colleges. And the FBI got in there, and the FBI guy in charge of the whole thing gets pulled off the case in the middle and disappears, and no one knows whatever happened to him. And it's because they were giving all this money to this guy to try to get coaches to take money, right? And he's like, we don't need the coaches. We fight with the coaches. I've got the kids, and they're going to college for 1 year, and then they're going to the pros, right? And, he's like, I'm paying them. But that's against the NCAA. It's not a federal felony, right? But if he bribes a coach, it's a federal felony. So this FBI guy gets involved, and he pretends to be his partner. He's trying to get him to bribe these coaches. So the guy goes, well, I'll take your money. But he never gives them to the coaches. In any case, they ended up throwing him in jail for a year and a half. They throw a number of the coaches in jail. Now, he never paid the coaches, but he did take the money. And the FBI rented a big room in Vegas and gave him $100,000. And he and the coaches went out to strip bars. And they said, well, that's enough. And they kind of nailed a couple of these guys, but they never took the teams down. And at the end of the day, it was really interesting that Louisville because this one guy took money, it made him invalid. So Louisville got to be the victim. And the irony of that in this whole documentary is that Louisville had recently just got off probation by offering basketball recruits prostitutes. So, here this, ivory tower of purity, was the victim of this situation. Anyway, it was really interesting. I'd always wondered what happened. A great documentary called The Scheme. So if you want to take a look at that. But college basketball is just not that good anymore. It's they're in there for a year. The really good teams are pretty good, but they play together for a year. I mean, how good can they be? So they're off to the NBA. The NBA is fantastic. It's really hitting on all cylinders, and I already miss it really bad. Wish it would be back, even if they didn't play in front of people. So next thing, Matt Damon over Leonardo DiCaprio. Anybody agree with this? Disagree with this? It's kind of like they're kind of the same guy, kind of, but Matt Damon's just a better dude. He seems to be more pleasant. He seems more authentic in a lot of these roles, and I just think Titanic would have been better with Matt Damon. I think almost any of those. The Great Gatsby would have been better with Matt Damon. Matt Damon's just a cooler dude than Leonardo DiCaprio on anything, and they should just take Leonardo DiCaprio out of all those movies and just replace him with Matt Damon. I feel strongly about this. Maybe you disagree. So Julia Roberts over any other actress. Julia Roberts is cool as hell. I don't know. She's got it. She's got the it. Go from that. The Rock and George Clooney. Even though my wife Pam has a crush on both of them, and don't tell her, I try not to like them because she likes them too much, in my opinion. But I'm going to let that go, and I like those guys anyway. I don't know what it is. She's on to something there. They're pretty cool dudes, and I like their movies and most everything they're in. They can make, some actors and actresses are good enough that they can almost make any movie good that they're in. Al Pacino's the same, is that way. So there's a few others, but those two guys. Chris Paul is the best Thunder basketball player. Period. You can argue with me if you want. You can try to say Durant's better or Westbrook's better. Chris Paul's the best. It's just the way he leads. It's just the way he plays. He's the most fun to watch. End of story. Jamel Holloway was the best college football quarterback ever. And some people don't even list him as the best at Oklahoma because you got guys like Baker Mayfield and, we've got a number of incredible, Heisman Trophy winners in the last couple of years, and Jalen Hurts right there. Kyler Murray, will probably be one of the best in the NFL. He's really probably coming up on a great season. But Jamel Holloway, as a freshman in 1984, took over for Troy Aikman when Troy Aikman broke his leg against Miami and Norman. And they had completely changed the offense. And Holloway just took him and won a national championship. And that guy was a winner. And he's been sort of forgotten around Oklahoma. And that really probably happened because of the massive cocaine issues that happened right around that time. Charles Thompson, who came in after Jamel, was arrested for selling cocaine to an FBI agent, and it was sort of an out of control period on the OU football team. That's how Barry Switzer lost his job, and so Jamel hasn't been back around. But I tell you, that guy could game. That guy was a great player, and he dominated. And we never heard much from him again. He wasn't, the wishbone quarterbacks never really made it in the NFL, at least not as quarterback. So, but go back and watch Jamel Holloway if you want to see some great football. Seasons in the Sun is the best sad song ever. I've had joy. I've had fun. I've had Seasons in the Sun. Goodbye, my friend. So hard to die. I'm about to tear up right now like I do with bad movies. I'm just going to leave that right there. But if you really want to hear a great song, it's from the 1970s. I don't know who even sings it, but it's just weepy sad, and it is the saddest song ever sung. Hemingway is the world's best author. I put him up over Shakespeare. My dad's a Shakespearean professor. That gives me absolutely no authority on the subject, but I still claim that Hemingway's descriptions of anything are the best descriptions ever made in print. He could line out wherever he was, whether it was a little town in Spain the night before a bull match. I guess they call it bull matches, a bullfight. Whether it's the old man in the sea, whether it's the longest sentence ever written in literature, the first sentence in one of his books that describes when he fought in the Spanish Revolutionary War. He was an ambulance driver back then, or The Incredible Feast, a book that was published after his death by his widow after he committed suicide. But they used real names in his descriptions of F. Scott Fitzgerald and his wife Zelda. And the people he knew in his world. I mean, he put you there, right? I mean, I don't know if you've ever read any Hemingway, you know what I mean. If you haven't, do yourself a favor and pick one up. They're really hard to put down. He was the first great author from America. Well, they say Mark Twain was, and I can't take away from that. But to me, he's been the best, and I really think he's been the best since. I almost put, except that Tom Robbins is better, and I described Tom Robbins and his witty lyricist. But, Tom Robbins was sort of Hemingway, after the 60s, after the infusion of drugs, I guess, the creativity. He's not as good, but he sure is good. So I was just kidding about that. Hunter S. Thompson, I love Hunter S. Thompson. We could use some Hunter S. Thompson right now, right? I mean, what would Hunter S. Thompson be saying today? I mean, the way that guy wrote, he invented his own genre, right? His own gonzo literature is what he called it. And it was such hyperbole that you didn't know where the truth started or ended, and exaggeration came in. But I don't know. The guy lived an amazing, hard life. He may or may not have peed on Nixon's foot. He may or may not have had a nurse in a hospital, or not a hotel room in Miami, playing football with the doorman or whatever he had up there. He may not have eaten a lot of acid and driven through the deserts of California and Nevada with bats chasing him with his buddy Laszlo, but he probably did. And if he didn't, he sure described it well. But Hunter S. Thompson, that guy really described the counterculture better than anybody did. And we could sure use him or somebody like him today, that's for sure. I'm moving down the list of things that I like that not everybody else does. Snowboarding in the warmth of spring. You could add skiing to that as well. I really just don't like cold weather. Let's put it that way. I mean, skiing is a blast, right? I mean, it's fantastic, but I've skied at 0 degrees before, and you just don't move very well, right? You're numb, your face is numb. Anything that sees the anything beyond your clothing is just bitter. But the springtime's great. I don't even care if it's slushy. I mean, it's nothing better when you can do it in a t-shirt and just cruise down the mountain with the sun on your back and sunglasses on. It's a great time. I love when Aspen closes. I love Highlands on the last day is one of the best time. There always is some fun stuff. There was Bacon Day at Buttermilk once. Every time you'd stop, somebody would give you some bacon. They had different types of bacon. And man, I don't know. The spring is just great anywhere, isn't it? But the spring on a snowboard or skis, that's about as fun as it gets. Moving along, where are we at? Jerk chicken that makes your butt burn. If you want to eat the best jerk chicken ever, it's on 7 Mile Beach in the Grill in Jamaica, and it's called Bourbon Beach. Bourbon Beach is just the name of the joint, right? And they've got their chicken center, which is just this big flat grill and a guy in there with a big cleaver just breaking apart chicken. And they made this sauce, and it's kind of vinegary, and it's really spicy, and it's just fantastic. It's dark as sludge, and they just squirt it on there, and I mean, man, is that stuff good. But you feel it. You feel it going right through you. it'll make you pucker. But I tell you, it's the best thing I think I've ever eaten, and it's making my mouth water right now. I would love to have some Bourbon Beach Jamaican chicken or jerk chicken from Jamaica. Domestic light beer on a hot day. Look, I got to admit this. Maybe it's because I don't have a beard or a flannel shirt, but I'm just not a big craft beer liker. I don't know about you guys. I mean, a craft beer, I mean, are they tastier, really? I mean, they're kind of thick. It's kind of like drinking a loaf of beer, right? And, I like to suck down a few, to be honest. They put me in a good mood. They make me feel happy. So, a light beer is what I like. And on a sunny, hot day, about the last thing I want is a thick, indica beer. I mean, I'd much rather have a light beer, a Bud Light in particular. I don't know why I like Bud Light and I don't like Coors Light, but I do, and that is what it's like. But a good one in a glass with a long neck, that's an awesome thing. I'm talking about things I like that not other people do. Not that nobody likes them, but just a lot of other people don't, and that's okay. I'm cool with that. We're all individuals here. I like loud people. I like the really loud people that make people a little bit uncomfortable because they're too loud. They're just talking too loud at the table and people are always shushing them. I love those people. I don't know that they don't care, but I don't think they care, right? I mean, they're having their conversation. You can hear them if you want. And that's the way it is. Let's see who else is out there. I see Judge Rod Rings out there. It's good to see you, Judge. We're talking about the 100 things that I like that not everybody else does, and we're just talking about loud people. Paisleys, well, that's a bizarre thing. A Paisley's sort of like a comma. They sort of throw them on ties or handkerchiefs or bandanas sometimes, but it's a weird little design. I think its heyday was in the 60s. I think Paisleys kind of are. Not too far off of a Haight-Ashbury or a tie-dye or whatever, but a Paisley's a good thing. And, if I wore ties very often, I would want it to have a Paisley on it. Leave it at that. That goes right into number 50, suits without ties. I would much rather wear a suit without a tie than a suit with a tie. I don't know what it is. It feels constricting to me. I feel dressed up right now, dressed up enough. But, who needs a tie? I also like not having any tattoos. I don't have any tattoos whatsoever. There was once where we thought about it, but the reason I didn't is we were in New Zealand where tattoos were legal. We're on a rugby tour, and it was going to take 4 hours, and we were going to have to lose all our friends, and it was going to hurt. So I was like, well, that's just not a good deal, and it was going to cost money, and we were on tour, and we didn't have much money left. So I never got a tattoo, and you know what? Don't really like them very much. They don't do much for me, and really glad I don't want one. So having a tattoo-less existence, I wear with pride. Volkswagen buses and things. We had a Volkswagen bus. I got to drive it in high school. It had all sorts of secret compartments. It was a Vanagon, which meant that you could lift the top and camp in it. It was a campmobile, I think they called it. It had a Volkswagen Bug engine in a vehicle 3 times its size. So the fastest it would go was 55 miles an hour, which when you're in high school, and if you're in high school in the 80s, then all of us, well, I'd say all of us, most everybody else had a muscle car, right? So the muscle cars could just kill it. And so I don't know, it was one of the craziest existences. You could get a muscle car for $2,000, and the more beat up and muscly it was, the cheaper it was. So here's all these people that didn't know how to drive being put in the fastest vehicles ever made and tearing around towns. It was silly, but that's what it was. In any case, I had a Volkswagen. So when we'd go places, like we had a friend who had some land out in the country, these other guys would be ripping down Highway 9 at about 100 miles an hour, and I'm just 55 miles an hour, got it packed, I've got the van, so mine are full of people, but we had to party with it, so it didn't much matter. When we got there is when it was going to start anyway, but that was fun. Things are those Jeep versions of them, and you see them in Mexico sometimes, but what an incredible vehicle. They're it's like a 4-seater Jeep. When, the windshield goes down, the doors can come off. Those are really cool. They're only around in the early 70s in America, although they're in Mexico now. Boy, that'd be fun to drive one of those. I love justice over power. right? Again, I'm a lawyer, right? But I love and I said I love causes. So when justice wins over power, to me, and I also said I love underdogs, or that's like all coming together, right? Justice over power. I love that. Some people have power. Maybe they don't love that. So that's why it's my list of things I like that not everybody else does. Jackie Robinson is the best second baseman. If Professor Tepker, if you're still there, you're a big Dodgers fan. Jackie Robinson got a lot of credit because of the color barrier. And a lot of people said he wasn't the best player from the Negro Leagues, right? Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, some other guys were really, really amazing. But they brought Jackie Robinson up. A lot of people have said over history that's because his personality was better to put up with all the horrible things he had to go through. But that guy could play. He stole home in the World Series. And they won the World Series. They beat the Yankees in the greatest era of Yankee power ever in the 50s with Mickey Mantle and all those incredible Yankees. But Jackie Robinson, and he was massive for a second baseman. He played a little first base also, but he was just great. He's in the top ranking second baseman if you ever bother to go look at it when it comes to batting percentage and on base percentage and those other things. He's really right there. I think he's probably number 2 overall in those things, but he's really a fantastic baseball player and almost has lost the credit for how good he is because of what he did in breaking the color barrier. But Jackie Robinson, greatest second baseman of all time. I love ramen noodles without the broth. I've loved them that way since I was in college, and you could get a pack of 4 of them for $1. No, you could get a pack of 4 of them for $0.25. We had to do it. So macaroni and cheese was 25 cents for one, but ramen noodles was a pack of 4 for 25 cents. So basically, we would have macaroni and cheese as the luxury meal, and then with a bunch of ramen noodles on the way. That's what we did in college out in Berkeley. And I would never wanted it with the liquid. I would just put the sauce on top of it, the dry noodles. And it's funny, pho and ramen have become, really kind of fancy dishes now. They're not 4 for 25 cents anymore. They're about $8 a bowl. And I always get the dry pho or the dry ramen when I go to those restaurants back from those days. So that's something that I love that other people don't really. What else we got? Adding Tony Chachere's seasoning to almost everything. Have you ever had Tony Chachere's seasoning? We found it in the 1970s on a trip across the country with my parents in Louisiana. And it comes in a green bottle, and Tony Chachere, we called it Tony C because we could never pronounce that last name. So Tony C's is a great mix of Cajun seasoning that really makes anything better. I've started an entire cuisine of Cajun Jewish food, and so I spice spice Jewish food up and add Cajun food to it. Like I like to make a matzo ball with Tony Chachere in it, and then instead of chicken in it, we'll have blackened chicken in it, and it's just fantastic. We might put some boudin sausage or any sausage really in there with it, and it just makes it much more flavorful. But Tony Chachere, I got that. It is excellent. This is sponsored by Tony Chachere. Not that he gave us any money, but that's what it is. I love bacon on bagels. I don't care what you say. I don't care. I love bacon on bagels. Bacon is meat candy. Bacon is a pure and perfect food. I don't know why that any religion, whether the Jewish or Islamic religions, would forbid bacon, but they're wrong. I'm calling it right now. I don't care if I'm blaspheming or not. They're absolutely wrong. Bacon is good. Bacon on a bagel with cheese or cream cheese is a perfect breakfast meal. It's the perfect breakfast sandwich. It's much better than an Egg McMuffin or any other variation of that, a more healthy one, whatever. I'm not going to get into whether McDonald's is healthy or not. McDonald's tastes good. Matter of fact, let me just say this. McDonald's is actually simultaneously delicious and disgusting. My kids won't eat McDonald's. They have been brainwashed against it. No one will go there. My wife and I still do, and my wife eats well. She's a very, very good eater, or healthy eater. but McDonald's just tastes good. I don't know. They put it in labs, whatever. But the McMuffin is a great sandwich. Don't get me wrong. And the sausage McMuffin, no egg with cheese. But it does not hold a candle to the bagel with cheese and bacon or the bagel and cream cheese and bacon. Bagels and bacon are one of my favorite things that not everybody agrees with. Let's see what else we got. Snow crab legs are better than king crab or lobster. Right there. Gonna say it. Snow crab legs better than king crab legs and lobster, even though those other ones cost substantially more money. So we've gone through this a couple times. Like, I like cheap red wine that tastes really good over expensive red wine, and I like crab legs, especially snow crab legs, over either the king crab legs or the lobster. And I can explain why. So the snow crab leg, if you steam it, or boil it for just like 4 minutes, like not very long, put a little crab boil in there, maybe a little Tony Chachereau, right? And then it comes out 4 minutes. It's just the perfect time. You can just crack it open with your fingers and you pull it, and there's a big, thick, meaty, sweet meat, right? And you dip it in your little garlic butter, which can also have some Tony Chachereau in it too, get a little spice. But man, I tell you, get that whole thing, just eat it. Primo. Now, the king crab legs, you got to fight that thing. You got to crack it. Sometimes you got to hit it with a hammer. It bends your fork, and you get it out there, and it's stringy, and you can't even get it all. Who needs that? And a lobster, I love lobster. Lobster tail is fantastic, but I like the taste of the crab meat better than I like the lobster meat. The lobster's a little bit chewier. It's a little meatier. I give it that, but it's not better. Snow crab, I like it. Not everybody agrees. All right, where are we at? America is great because of its inclusiveness, not its exclusiveness. Period. Leaving it at that. No discussion on that. Records are the best way to listen to music recordings. Better than 8 tracks. Don't think anybody questions that. Better than cassettes. Nobody questions that. And better than listening to it on Spotify or Pandora or a radio or whatever that. I don't know. It's that little crackle. And then it gets in there. And then you put it there. It is fantastic stuff. I bet Greg Singleton would agree to me. Greg, I am arguing right now under things that I love that not everybody agrees with, that vinyl records are the best way to listen to a musical recording as any other. And it's just that little grittiness. I mean, yeah, it's a pain in the ass to flip over a record. But here's the thing. When you're listening to other types of music, especially to Spotify and Pandora and your tunes, you pick out your favorite songs, but albums are like literature. Albums are like books. There's stories written on each other. And you know what? You can find some of the best music on the third side of a double album set. I mean, go listen to The Clash, London Calling. Go get the White Album from the Beatles and listen to the third side. That's where they put the stuff that they just love that nobody really listens to, that never gets any play on the radio. I mean, there's something about that. I've been looking for a great online record store because I don't know that my record store's around anymore. If anybody has a great online record store they could suggest, I'd like to buy some. I'd like to go buy some John Prine. I used to have a couple of John Prine albums, the one where he's on the bale of hay and the other one called Prime Prine. But I lost those over the years, especially when I sold my record collection a couple of times. I'd like to do that. I still would like to pick up a copy of Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. Haven't done that. And I'd like to. Mark Vinciguerra is out there. Mark Vinciguerra is an incredible sculptor. He's done, you know what a triptych is? A triptych is when they have three, actually four. It's triptych means three, but there's 3 panels and then 1 panel on the bottom. And there's a couple of really, really famous ones out there over the years. But Mark did the first 3D triptych, a sculpture, and it's these bodies levitating towards the heavens from the ground to halfway up to all the way up. Man, it's fantastic. He's got it in a garden. It's been around the world. Mark has just had an opening in Venice not too long ago, Sicily. He's French himself, but he came to Norman and did his art in the back room of a place that Pam was on the board of directors for a couple of years ago, and we become friends, and he is a fantastic guy. As a matter of fact, Mark and I had a great night drinking Russian Transcendentalists. This is a drink I invented by combining kombucha with vodka, and it made you healthy, it made you smart, and you got a little buzz on. And so talking to Mark Vinciguerra while drinking Russian Transcendentalist was a really important time for me. I really enjoyed it. Pushing up to see who else is there. Guess that's how we got right now. So I'm going on. I'm talking about the 100 best things that I like that not everybody else does. Neil Young is surprisingly better by himself than when he was with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And usually the bringing a bunch of people together makes them better, but some people are just better on their own. And I guess he wasn't really on his own. He had Crazy Horse, but his music's fantastic. He has the strangest voice ever. It's almost bad, but it's not. And man, the rock and roll riffs he had, in Cinnamon Girl and things like that. A lot of Nirvana and those guys in the 90s with grunge music really credit Neil Young with grunge music. But, Neil Young to me was that great, cross-section when country and rock got damn close together. Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, John Prine on the country side, and Neil Young, Jackson Browne, the Grateful Dead, were on the rock and roll side, and a lot of Jim Croce and just some great music all coming together. That's where I think of Neil Young. So I don't think of him as grunge, but man, that guy could wail a guitar as good as anybody, which was pretty fantastic. Moving along, the blues, we talked about that. The blues, that's America, man. That's what American music is all built on, was the blues. They say it's jazz, but I think the blues is sort of a better version of jazz, if you ask me. New Orleans jazz is kind of the blues, isn't it? The other jazz, it's sort of become what we think of jazz. It kind of got off somewhere else. But blues itself, it's a happy music, believe it or not. It's just about a sad thing, and it has a repetitive simplicity to it, a lot like reggae we talked. Reggae is sort of just the blues in the Caribbean. But in any case, I love the blues, and I love New Orleans, city that is a lot of fun. But I love New Orleans when Mardi Gras is not there, right? Because you can get around a little bit more. I didn't find Frenchman Street till recently, and I guess I didn't have to. They really used to have great music, New Orleans music, New Orleans jazz music on Bourbon Street until after Katrina. And when it came back, so many of those musicians left, it was gone. But Frenchman Street still has it. So if you ever get to Frenchman Street, that is some good stuff. And, lots of horns right out front, bands of about 9 to 15 people, all splitting the money, all related to each other. Man, that's good stuff. So New Orleans, probably America's best city, if you ask me. I prefer the Brooklyn Dodgers over the LA Dodgers. Just something about them was just cooler. I mean, you saw your friends from LA. Just disagree with you if you love those guys. But, the Boys of Summer, as they were called, were my dad's team when he was growing up. And I can almost name all of them. Gil Hodges and Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese and Sandy Koufax, Roy Campanella. These are just great baseball team that won it all in 55. And, just like the Dodgers, right? They were the bums. They didn't have a dynasty. They were good for a lot of years, but, they only won it once back then. And then, unfortunately, to great pain, they were upped and moved to L.A., and then the Giants were taken from them, and they got the Mets back. And so the Mets were one of my favorite teams. Love the Mets. But the Brooklyn Dodgers are definitely over the LA Dodgers. I love cilantro. I don't know how people don't love cilantro. How can you not love that taste? That taste is fantastic. And what's really interesting is, did you notice that cilantro, it's in Thai food and in Mexican food? Not in a lot of other foods, but why? Why is that? Thai and Mexican. Another flavor that's both Thai and Mexican is sriracha. Also pretty interesting, right? Well, you ponder on that. So the connection of cilantro and sriracha between Thai cuisine and Mexican cuisine. What's up with that? If you know, tell us. All right. Pinot Noir is the best red wine. Pinot Noir is an interesting grape. It grows in sort of colder climates, Northern California or Oregon, and man, it's good. It's lighter than the others. I mean, it's not the most expensive one. I already told you about that. Cabs and Syrahs and, just The cabs are a little too thick for me. Syrahs, yeah, I like them. I like a Syrah with a steak, and Merlots, they're just pretty good. I found Merlot first, but then when Pinot Noirs, they're light when you summertime drink, but I kind of just drink them all the time. I don't really pair them. I'm not a pairer of wines with different foods the way other people do. I just like Pinot Noir. I think it's good. I also think any red wine is better than any white wine. Stop, period, end of sentence. Sativa over indica, but only medicinally, of course. 70s country is better than current rock and roll. And I just described this a second ago because I really think 70s country and rock and roll in the early 70s were kind of the same music. But the lyrics, the characters, everything about it, the sound was better than rock and roll music is today. As a matter of fact, I don't know, is there rock and roll music today? My friend Michael Ogson just sent me some links to the Black Pumas and some other things like that. I haven't heard it yet. I think there's live music, but I think the music industry sort of died when Napster took over, didn't it? And so in any case, we don't get produced rock and roll music ever really since the grunge era. The Black Eyed Peas kind of jumped up there, and I like them, but they were sort of put together, right? They didn't come out of their garage. They weren't four boys that grew up or came together in Liverpool like the Beatles or anything like that. We haven't had a big movement of British rock and roll in a while. We could probably use that. I've been waiting for this era to produce good music. What is up with that? Well, this is a perfect time. These are all the things. There's so much pain in the world. We've got a pandemic. We've got a president that's got people loving him or hating him. Does it really require a war to have great music? I hope that's not the case. But let's get some great music out there, because right now I'm putting 70s country music better than you guys. That is a double dog dare. Greg Singleton, I'm talking to you. Dan Fumi, I'm talking to you. Mike Hosty, if you're out there, I'm talking to you. We need better music, because right now rock and roll is something of the past. I think people are replaying that style. We need more good current rock and roll, and that's that. Ball caps. I love ball caps. I love kids. I think this pope is the best pope. You can argue with me if you want. I'm not Catholic. Been married to a couple Catholics over the years. But I like this pope because I just think he's a great dude. I think he's a great religious leader. I think he's what a religious leader acts like, right? The pope. He calls BS on it. He calls BS in his own religion. And that, you know what? That's refreshing to me. I think you got to be big enough to be able to call out your own institutions when they're wrong, right? That's what leadership's about. And the Pope's not afraid to do that. And I like this Pope. I also think that the African-American influence on music, sports, food, and fashion is the most substantial influence on American society. Think about that for a second. No other group at all, the majority, any other minority, has had as much influence on our society as the African Americans. If you just look at our music, we just talked about it. We talked about jazz, we talked about blues, we talked about rock and roll. You can add in rap, even country. All of that stems from African American music. You look at food, fried chicken, the Cajun food we talked about. All the American types of foods, the most of them come out of African American food. Fashion. The way we wear a lot of things right now come out of the African-American community. Our language, what's American about it, a lot of it comes out of the African-American community. Not all of it. I'm just saying it's the biggest influence we've had on our society as a whole. It's what makes us different than Canada. It makes us different than the other European countries. And when we go to the Olympics, it's African-Americans that lead us in sports, in basketball, and all the other things. It's African-Americans that are making us the best in the world. And it's really interesting about why there's still racial tension in our country. We should be happy with that. We should be excited about that and celebrating it instead of creating divisions within us. And I never got that. But one thing that I think that not everybody agrees with. I think the definition of an American is based on the concepts of protecting our individual freedoms of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, instead of mandating a superiority of a specific language, race, or religion. That's what I think. Not everybody agrees with that. They really think that we should say we are a Christian nation and English is our language and blah, blah, blah. But that's not what America is about. America is about freedoms and equality so that you can believe that, but you can't mandate it. You can't make others do that. Now, you can make your own family members do that. Matter of fact, you can persuade people to do it. You have every right to be persuasive in that. You can bring somebody else. Jerry Fragoni says Dungeness crab. Well, you're not the first person. My friend Susan Bayless said that last night. Dungeness crab is a good crab. It's a very fine crab, sir, and it's noted, but it's not as good as the sweet crab, the snow crab that I love so much, in my opinions. And that's why these are things that I like that not everybody agrees with, but I always appreciate the opinions of Jerry Fragoni. I love women comedians. Women comedians are hilarious to me. I love smart women. I love smart, funny women. They really get me. I love them. My favorite one is Sarah Silverman, I have to say. And I tell you, one of my favorite shows is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. The only problem with it is, they put out on Amazon, they put all the shows out, and then Pam and I, we just binge watch the damn thing, and we watch it so fast it's over, and then you got to wait a whole nother year, and you binge watch it again. They've done 2, and there you go. But so she's not a real comedian. I think she's loosely based on Joan Rivers, but I think she's a lot funnier than Joan Rivers, her writers are, at least. Anyway, she really pulls it off. She's hilarious, but Sarah Silverman, to me, is one of the funniest people ever, and women comedians are great. I really dig old Jewish men, not just because my dad's one and all of his friends are, and my grandfather was one. Hell, I'm becoming one. But old Jewish men are funny. They just laugh a lot, and they're witty, and those are things I appreciate a lot, and that's a cool thing. Jerry Fagoni says Gary Clark Jr. has some rock and roll in him. Oh, well, that's true. There are some good rock and roll out there in the country western thing, that's for sure. I see Jarl Ginsberg's out there. Mike Williams, Chad London tunes in a lot. Good to see you, Chad. Having a good time. I'm talking about 100 things that I like that not everybody agrees with. Just throwing it out there. We've had some pushback on a couple of these things, but one of the best things, I don't think there'll be a lot of argument about this one. Grapefruit cut in half in a tiny little bowl, eaten with a spoon. I mean, that is one of the greatest breakfasts that I've ever had, right up there, and often goes very well with the bagel and bacon combination I talked about earlier, because, the grapefruit's a different thing, but man, a half a grapefruit cut in half, especially if you cut the little, pieces so that you can just pop it out with a spoon. Fantastic meal. It's a breakfast in itself. Toga parties. Can't have enough toga parties. They're a lot of fun. Have you ever gone golfing in a toga and then gone to a toga party? That's a fun time. Not everybody agrees. I got jumped once wearing a toga after a golfing toga party on our varsity alumni weekend, and that was rough. I lost my one of my sandals that I was wearing, which was sad because I really love those sandals. Anyway, weightlifting. I've really fallen in love with weightlifting lately. I mean, you know why? Because I hate jogging. I'll admit it. Jogging sucks. Jogging is, I can go play touch rugby. I can play basketball. You can go for an hour and you're fine. But if I jog, I've gone a mile and my back starts to hurt. Something in my shoulder will hurt. The bottom of my foot. It's weird. I don't know what it is. But if I run, for an hour playing touch rugby, I don't feel any of those things. So I like weights. I've been doing weights a lot lately with my son. We've been having a lot of fun doing that. One of those things I've really appreciated during the coronavirus isolation has been lifting weights and eating well, because I'm not really good at that, but what are you going to do? Anyway, I appreciate that. Weightlifting. I love dirty rugby songs. I was pretty good at singing dirty rugby songs. Matter of fact, I took a folklore class at Berkeley, and I got an A because we had to have 100 versions of something. I knew 100 rugby songs. Matter of fact, we had a couple left over, and some really great ones. I'm not going to sing any of them. Some of them you can't sing anymore. I mean, we've changed a little bit since the 80s and before, but I used to work in Chicago. The African Love Song, Gang Bang, that one might be on the edge, but it's got really good knock-knock jokes in it. And there's a few others about Yogi Bear and other bears. But in any case, great songs, and I love them, and I'll just leave that one there. I love Irish bands with storytellers. Have you ever just been to an Irish bar or seen Irish singers? Usually just three guys, a guitar, bass player, and a drums. That's all they need. And the guitar player, many times with an acoustic, but maybe you're like, well, just stop and tell a story. And it's the storytelling of the Irish that really differentiates them from the English or really anybody else, but in particular the English, because the Irish are just like a more fun version of the English, aren't they? I mean, they don't think of each other as versions of each other, but they really are if you're looking at it from the outside. But the Irish are fantastic, and their music and storytelling is really, really cool. I love street food. Right? What's your favorite street food? I can tell you great street food events like 56th Avenue in New York City and maybe 5th. And they had a guy there, and he's not there anymore because I used to work there in the early 80s in my uncle's law firm. And they had a guy selling Slovaki. And Slovaki's kind of like a gyro, but different. But the one thing that really distinguished it is the red sauce that was on it. And I love that red sauce. And I'd go to the Greek house and these other Greek restaurants, and they wouldn't have the red sauce. They'd have this white yogurt sauce. Bland. I'd like spicy food. I like the red sauce, and I've never found it until recently. I was with our favorite relatives out in the Bay Area are David and Nama. And David and Nama Sternlick took me to a really cool Greek kind of chain in San Francisco, and they had hot sauce, and that was the red sauce, and I could buy it, and I've been mail ordering the hot sauce in, and I take it into Greek restaurants now. But that all started with some great street food in New York. I've had great Indian street food in Oxford, England. I've had great street food on the streets of China. There was a place, little chunks of meat on skewers by Muslims on a little grill, and they fed that up. And in Japan, we had that too. They had a rugby bar that our friend Masa took us to when we were at the World Cup, and they had a grill inside, and again, little skewers and little meat on it. But these street foods that they give you are dumplings. You could get a plate of dumplings in China for about 5 cents, and I tell you, some of the best food I've ever had has been off the street. You can get street lobster in Jamaica, and while I do prefer crab to lobster, there is something great about a lobster cut in half and put on an oil, what do you call those things? Those oil barrels. They cut the oil barrel in half, make it a grill, serve it right on the beach. You can get a lobster, you sit around, drink a Red Stripe, do whatever else they do in Jamaica to make themselves happy, and wait for your lobster to be ready. And then there you go, and in about 20 minutes, you're eating lobster, just pulling it out with a little fork. And street food, man, that's some good stuff. I prefer New York-style slices of pizza to the others. The deep dish, Chicago, whatever, blah. Man, those big, long ones, like this, they kind of drip a little bit of grease. Oh, man, you could fold them a little bit. Oh, those are the best. And you can get them for, I don't know if they're $1 anymore, but they used to be $1. And, trying to find the best place in New York, I don't know why they call it the best, because they all kind of taste alike, right? But they always say Ray's is the best. And there's so many versions of Ray's. Oh, you're talking about Ray's in Flatbush? You're talking about Ray's over in the Bronx. There's a Ray's in Manhattan. It's pretty good. And it does go on about these different Ray's. But any of them are great. They're pretty fantastic things. Hi, Mike Williams. See you out there. Talking about things I like that not everybody agrees with. I like to cook feasts. I like to cook, but I don't really like to just, make something simple. I like to throw stuff in, right? And we did that. We had a really nice, we made a Béarnaise sauce with just what we had in the house yesterday, and you needed shallots, and we didn't have shallots, so we used cilantro because I love cilantro. I talked about that earlier. And we added lots of seasoning to it because it's usually pretty bland, and that was pretty good. Made it for our family, made it for my parents. We took it over there, talked about that earlier, even took it to this homeless guy. And that was just kind of cooking a feast. That was fun, doing that with my kids. I love painting. My kids love painting. They paint everywhere. They paint on the walls, paint on the floor. But painting's a cool thing. It's very therapeutic. I like matzo ball soup as medication if you're feeling bad. And I like a big fat matzo ball, one about this big that takes up the whole bowl and sucks it all in, right? I saw that in the 2nd Avenue Deli for the first time in Manhattan, and they had the big balls. And big matzo balls, That's how you want your matzah. And that's a medication. It really is. It's good for you. It cures the coronavirus. That's not just because I have an interest in matzah balls, because I don't. I wish I did. I wish I had an interest in matzo balls and I could help persuade you to have it to save you from the coronavirus. But I don't, but I still suggest it heavily. I love handshakes over high fives or any other version of those handshakes. A good handshake is a good thing. Straight in the eyes, looking at them, that's a cool thing. I also like a hug, right? Handshakes and hugs. That's pretty cool. Good friends, just, hugging it out. That's where it's all out. Male, female, doesn't matter. That's human connection, and I always appreciate those. And giggling. Who of you know great gigglers? The best giggler I know, and there's a couple of them. I'll name my top gigglers. One is Tom Miracle. Are all gigglers props? Are all props gigglers? Not all props are gigglers. Some props are pretty serious, but some props are gigglers. Tom Miracle, that guy could giggle for days, and it's very contagious. And W.C. Granat, those two guys, really, really funny, and they just get you giggling, and it just changes the mood everywhere. And that just leads right into silly people. I mean, I prefer silly people to about anybody, right? I mean, it's really funny when they act silly in a serious situation, and it frustrates people even more. I like silly people even more than I like loud people, and I like loud people a lot. I like the Grateful Dead. I know a lot of people like the Grateful Dead, but do they really know the Grateful Dead? Have they really heard a lot of the Grateful Dead? Have they ever gone to a Grateful Dead show? Those are incredible experiences, and it's a great subculture and an incredible spirit of live music that just kind of lives on, which is pretty cool. I love big dogs over little dogs. I really they lick. I'm getting to the end here. I like movies about baseball or golf over watching baseball or golf. I like Black Eyes. I've had a few of them. I think they're a sign of toughness and putting your head in there. I like the smell of leather. I like John Prine better than I like Bob Dylan. I like American Indian humor. They're very funny people, and it's very contagious. And I think rugby is more fun to play than any other sport. And this is John Velie. I'm out of here. That's 100 things that I like that not everybody else does. I hope you enjoyed watching today. I appreciate seeing you every day. Take care.